Hi everyone, Miss Mortimer here with your learning for this week. I hope everyone's staying safe and keeping well. We're on to week 7 already, so hopefully everyone's getting on fine. And I'll explain what your learning is in the next couple of videos. This week's Literacy Garden reading strategy is related to Winston's web of words. And this is when we can get a little bit of help with tricky or interesting words, and it also helps us to develop our vocabulary. So as pupils are reading, they might come across a few words that they aren't so sure of. And a lot of pupils are tempted to just guess what it means and move on. Obviously, that's not really helpful though. It's not really the right thing to be doing. We can pause and actually think about the word a little bit more and see if we can figure out what it means. But also, it could involve going back on a book you've read or a chapter you've read and picking out tricky or interesting words. So this week's strategy and looking at the web of words actually relates very closely to the strategy we're going to look at next week, which involves Ollie the Owl and metalinguistics. So it can come as an overlap. We are going to teach them separately, as Winston and his web of words are almost a beginning stage to look at Ollie the Owl and metalinguistics, which I will give more information about next week. But metalinguistics is using things and tools like dictionaries to take a closer look at word meanings and how words are used. Whereas this week's strategy is more about using our own knowledge and different strategies to overcome tricky words and developing a greater awareness of tricky words and thinking about our knowledge of words. So it is good to bear in mind that although it might be tempting this week to grab a dictionary or go online and look up the words, we want to really save that for next week when we're focusing on metalinguistics. And I mean, if you do want to touch on that this week and look up the words in a dictionary, there's no harm in that, but you will notice that we speak more about that next week. So I would recommend for now, as I'll explain in the next few parts of the video, I will explain a few strategies you can use when looking at your web of words, but try and leave using dictionaries and thesauruses till next week if you can. Okay, so when you're coming across a tricky word as you were reading, there are a few strategies you can use without looking at a dictionary to have a prediction about what the word might mean. So, for example, we've chosen the word perimeter here. So if pupils aren't sure what this means when they're reading, they can think, well, what does the word look like? It kind of looks like something. Maybe look at the beginning and the ending of the word. What does it look like? I'm trying not to say too much because it does flow into our next strategy, which is break up the word. So you might then break it up into different parts, which I'll show you in the next part. Perimeter. What parts do I maybe recognise? What parts do I not? And also what can be really helpful, my pen's bleeding a bit here, sorry. Take a closer look at the sentence or maybe the chapter overall. So once I was reading with a reading group and we were reading about kind of a hospital setting, for example. So when coming across a word in that chapter, you could make a guess that, well, I'm guessing it's related to hospitals or related to something medical because we are discussing hospitals in this chapter or in the sentence. So you can make a good guess about what a word means using these strategies. So here we have an example of breaking up the word perimeter. You do notice that obviously we've doubled up the R and the M, but we're really breaking up the parts of the word here into smaller words we might recognise better. Now, obviously this might not work with every word. It might not even give you the right answer, but it does work on those word analysis skills that pupils should be developing when they are reading. And that overall affects their vocabulary that they can use in their writing in the future. So yes, perimeter. So we've broken it up into per, rim, meter. And we know that per means for or each, for each something. So £6 per can or something. Rim means the outer edge of something. So we're thinking about the outer edge of something here probably. And meter means to measure. So we know that from maths, we speak about meters, it's something to do with measure. So if we were going to have a guess at what this word meant, we could say, well, for each outer edge, we measure something. So the perimeter of something is to do with measuring the outer edge of something. That would be a pretty good guess at what the word perimeter means. So how can you practice using Winston's web of words this week in your reading? So you could, as previously shown, just pick out words and have a discussion task, write them down, break them up, have a discussion about what you think the words mean. Maybe as you're reading with an adult, you could, or a sibling for that matter, you could discuss what you think the words are meaning. But what I would do in class and what I would do if you want a more structured written form of a task is do something like we've got on this board here as an example. So I would often challenge pupils first of all to find, 10's a good amount of numbers, but you can gauge if that's too many, maybe 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, maybe 20 for some pupils. Try and find 10 or so tricky words in their book. Some pupils will like to say that none of the words are tricky depending on the book that they're using. In that case, I would try and encourage them to use interesting words. Do be careful that obviously names of places, names of people, especially in more imaginative, creative books, they are not really going to come up with a prediction of what they mean. It can sometimes be tempting to think that's a really tricky word. Because it looks really complicated, but if it is a person's name or a name of a place, that wouldn't really be appropriate for this task. We're more looking for vocabulary that we can use in future writing. So we've got our perimeter example in there. We found perimeter as one of our tricky words. And then right next to that, we make a prediction using the skills we showed in the previous example. So we think that perimeter means to measure the outside edge of something. And I think that's a pretty good guess. And this is where you could then save this to work on next week again. You could have a peek in a dictionary and check if you were correct. But definitely you'll notice next week when we come to do our strategy on metalinguistics that it links really closely to what we've been doing this week. Hopefully that was helpful for you this week. As always, remember to just talk to your teachers if you have any further questions. And we'll see you next week. Bye.